afternoon and shortly after. Good afternoon. It's shortly after 1:30 on May 3rd. We're here for a Planning, Housing, and Parks operating budget and CIP conversation and committee work session. We have 4 items on our agenda today. We're going to start with the Office of Zoning and Administrative Hearings. Welcome. We have Ms. Robeson-Hannon with us. Thanks for joining us. We have OMB with us today, and we have council staff with us today. Why don't we go through this quickly? Why don't I turn it over, and you can walk us through the packet, and I'll turn it over then to Ms. Robeson-Hannon, and you can tell us about the work that you have been doing. So why don't we start with the packet, then I'll turn it over to you, and then we'll see if colleagues have any comments or questions.
Good afternoon, Chair Friedson and Councilmember Fana-Gonzalez. My name is Logan Anbinder. I'm a postgraduate fellow with Council Central staff, and we are here to discuss the FY24 recommended operating budget for the Office of Zoning and Administrative Hearings, or OZA. We are here with Ms. Lynn Hannon, the Director of OZA, and Ms. Catherine Bryant-Higgins of OMB. The mission of OZA is to conduct due process hearings and land use and other administrative matters in a manner that protects the rights of the participants, provides a complete record in each case, results in a thorough and balanced report or decision, and serves the public interest. And if you look at the fiscal summary on the first page of your packet, you'll see the county executive has recommended an increase of $50,987, or 7.2% from FY24. All of that is in personnel costs. There's no recommended increase in operating costs. As a matter of fact, there's about a 12% recommended decrease in operating costs. So we'll move, and council staff does recommend approval of the overall budget. But to move on to some of the details, we will talk about the Racial Equity and Social Justice Review on page 2 of your packet. Like other offices, OZA submitted to the Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice the Operating Budget Equity Tool. ORESJ issued OZA a rating of 2 stars on a scale of 0 to 3 stars, indicating that the department level budget demonstrates a commitment to advancing racial equity and social justice in the county. ORESJ's feedback was that it would be useful for OZA to collect demographic information on the individuals who bring cases before the office to make sure those individuals are being treated in an equitable manner. OZA staff is receptive to this suggestion. They have conducted significant research into demographic data collection practices by judicial and quasi-judicial bodies in other jurisdictions. OZA's primary concern is that as a quasi-judicial office themselves, they don't want to have demographic data collection lead to the appearance of bias in their proceedings. So they've suggested that ORESJ's feedback could be addressed by having another independent county office track or verify participants' race through publicly available records. And OZA also recommends that any policies or procedures that are implemented to address this feedback be developed jointly and applied consistently across the county's quasi-judicial bodies, which in the legislative branch does include the Board of Appeals as well as the Merit System Protection Board. Moving on to the third page of your packet, regarding hybrid hearings, OZA has conducted fully virtual hearings since the COVID-19 pandemic, and it's found that's correlated with increased participation. The OZA hearing room is in the process of being outfitted for the capability to conduct hybrid hearings, and the council intends to allocate roughly $23,000 in FY24 from the Legislative Branch Communications Outreach Non-Departmental Account, or NDA, for a part-time contract position to moderate hybrid meetings. And this funding would be allocated jointly between OZA and the Board of Appeals since they do share a hearing room. The only budget item to discuss or to note really is the personnel and technical adjustments. Again, since this comprises the entirety of the county executive's recommended increase, and personnel costs have been taken up separately by the GO committee and the full council, there's nothing that needs to go on the reconciliation list here. So with that, council staff's recommendation is to approve the budget as recommended by the executive, and I'm happy to answer any questions or turn it over to Ms. Hannon for comments.
Thank you and good job. Welcome, and we appreciate your work here, and always appreciate having new talent and new energy. It's a great program, and really appreciate your participation in it. So thank you, and welcome, and job well done. I'll just note a couple things, and I want to turn it over to Director Hannon. No new positions, no vacancies, and no additional funding aside from personnel related and technical, non-discretionary technical adjustments. So it's a pretty straightforward committee, council staff, recommendation. I'll just note the one piece related to the racial equity and social justice issue. It was noted briefly here, but we have discussed the same issue with the Merit System Protection Board in the Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee, and I do think it's going to be an area of follow-up to look at how we address the requesting of data and information for quasi-judicial bodies where these entities do not feel comfortable doing that because they feel that it might interfere with the impartiality of their work. But we do need the data, and so we need to work through this. And so I think that is a follow-up item that I just want to note here because it has been raised. In other instances, the Merit System Protection Board had the same response, which I think is a reasonable response, but it requires further investigation to solve the problem without exacerbating the challenge of impartiality that we need in our quasi-judicial bodies. I just thought it should be noted. Appreciate council staff noting that. And with that, I'll turn it to you, Director Hannon, if you want to share a few comments about the work of OZA.
Thank you, Mr. Friedson. This is just to update you. Oh, I'm sorry. Usually I'm just yelling, so nicely yelling, but no. Just to update you on the hybrid hearings, we're very excited for that. We're very close to actually accomplishing it. We were planning it for the last year, and we were missing some teeny-weeny part in the supply chain that we just received like a month ago, and don't ask me what the part is because I don't know, but I do know we have it. So we're looking forward to starting that, and I want to thank the council for their funding of the part-time Zoom operator because that helps us focus on what people are saying and managing the hearing and all that. So we do want to thank the council for that support. That's going to make a big difference. We are excited about it because we know that both citizen and other participation is increased with the hybrid hearing, especially, for instance, for small businesses like child daycares. They don't have to leave, come in person to a hearing room, and so we think it'll be a big benefit for everyone. So that's on the tech side. We don't have yet on the work side. We think there's going to be a big increase in the number of cases we've had so far. Just this year, our fee revenue was up about 35,000 from last year. So we are continuing to see an increased workload. On the RESJ, I'm glad you're having that discussion. I did do quite a bit of research on best practices in other jurisdictions, and I will just say it's not just a concern. The rules of judicial conduct do apply to us as hearing examiners in a quasi-judicial proceeding. Those prohibit us from asking questions about race unless it's specifically related to the subject of the proceeding. So for instance, if this were a human rights discrimination case under Chapter 27 of the code, we could ask, but otherwise the rules specifically prevent us from asking. And I did look at the circuit courts. The circuit courts I was able to research did not have any type of tracking for this. There was a lot of tracking on jury outcomes and things like that, but not on, I guess you would call it user experience. The best model that I could find was the federal government, which uses an outside agency that obtains demographic information from the census records or some publicly available site. So a third agency unrelated to our agency can track the data. And that was what I thought the best model. I'm glad that Mr. Friedson, that you're seeing it's a discussion in progress, because I understand the county's concern about making sure that we can always be looked at for what we can do to have a good outcome, and that's always a worthy thing. But there are some nuances here that further study, I think, would be more helpful to find a consistent method through all the agencies to be able to do that.
We appreciate it. Yep, so we will follow up on that. I think it may be more of a geo issue since it's a countywide issue related to the racial equity, social justice, but obviously impacts your office quite a bit, and so we do have to find the way to do it appropriately and within the confines of the law, but we want to make sure that we're doing it. I think there are some options, but we have to figure it out. So we will figure it out that. So we have a committee staff recommendation. Colleagues, please, Councilmember Nani,
Say it again.
Councilmember Fani Gonzalez.
No, one more time. Natalie Fani Gonzalez. Say it with me. Fani Gonzalez.
Yeah, I will admit, as I was saying it, I was seeing the lawn sign with the big Natalie on it, but this is a more formal setting, and so I was supposed to say your last name, and so I said a little bit of both, and it didn't quite work out so well.
You know I had to make fun of you after that. Okay, quick question, nothing related to this, but I'm going to ask the question just because this is the first time I see you in this setting. How many applications on conditional use have been approved for solar since the ZTA was passed? I was on the planning board working on this, that's why I'm curious.
Yes, we have one pending right now.
Just one?
Well, we have another one. Unfortunately, because they're pending, I can tell you there's one in the works and one pending.
That's all I need to know.
And they are being processed. Well, I can't, unfortunately, I'm a little constrained, but when the decision's out, the hearing's been held on the one, and the decision's out, and I anticipate that our process will be fairly quick.
Nice.
And that's all I want to
So only two, pretty much. That's sad. All right, thank you so much.
Okay, with that, we have council staff recommendation. Without objection, we will accept the council staff recommendation. Thank you for your work, and we will see you again soon.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, with that, we are going to move on to Board of Appeals. I believe we have Ms. Jay, Executive Director, Board of Appeals, and Chair Pentecost who are joining us. We have, appreciate it. Why don't we turn it over to council staff again, and you can walk us through this packet as well.
Thank you very much. So yes, this is the FY24 recommended operating budget for the Board of Appeals, or BOA. The mission of the Board of Appeals is to assist the public in understanding and to hear and decide in a quasi-judicial setting inquiries and applications under specific sections of the county code. They also hear matters regarding variances, administrative appeals of certain decisions of county agencies, and oral argument on conditional use decisions or modification of special exceptions. So again, on your fiscal summary on the first page of your packet, you'll see the county executive has recommended a $40,106 increase, which is a 6.6% increase from last year's FY23 approved budget. Council staff does recommend approval of this budget as well. Regarding the Racial Equity and Social Justice Review, ORESJ also issued BOA a rating of 2 stars on a scale of 0 to 3, again indicating that the board's department level budget demonstrates a commitment to advancing racial equity and social justice in the county. ORESJ's feedback for the board was that it would be useful for the board itself to solicit or receive feedback from the individuals who bring cases before the board to make sure that they feel they've been treated in an equitable manner. BOA has engaged with these issues, and their primary concern is soliciting feedback in such a way that they ensure that the feedback is representative, that it's not just a specific subset of individuals who are replying to the surveys or the feedback requests that are sent out. So BOA will continue to assess ways to receive representative feedback, but is engaging with ORESJ's suggestion there. Moving on to the third page of the packet, as mentioned before, the council is allocating about $23,000 from the Legislative Branch Communications Outreach NDA to provide the capacity for BOA to conduct hybrid hearings. And then moving down to the bottom of the page, again, the only recommended increase is due to personnel and technical adjustments, which do not need to go on the reconciliation list. The only other note for the committee is an informational item regarding the Board of Appeals fees. BOA collects revenue primarily via filing fees. Those can vary a little bit from year to year, but have been pretty consistent for the past few years. The office collected about $182,000 in zoning fees in FY22 and about $179,000 in FY21. About 2/3 of that is passed through from the Department of Permitting Services as a portion of the special exception administration fee. Due to the change in the zoning ordinance that took effect in 2014, no new special exceptions have been granted since 2014, and so BOA anticipates that at some point in the future, it's not begun yet, but at some point in the future, those fees might trend downward as the special exceptions phase out, which could result in a partial reduction in revenue. So no action, no vote is needed on this item, but it was something that council staff just wanted to flag for the committee's information. Other than that, council staff does recommend approval of the overall budget, and happy to answer questions or turn it over to Director Jay.
Great. We have another straightforward recommendation here. No vacancies, no new positions, and the increase is solely a result of compensation increases and mandatory non-discretionary technical changes. With that, why don't we turn it over to Executive Director Jay.
Thank you, Mr. Anbinder. He's been a great assistant for. He's given us a lot of help. He got us new chairs for our hearing room, which, as Ms. Robeson-Hannon indicated, is almost finished, ready for complete technical build-out. We appreciate that.
I think we sprung for those last year in committee. It was not so robust debate, but we unanimously sprung for that here last year.
Last year we got the board members' laptops. That's working nicely. It's
Good.
reducing our paper output. It's eliminated our need for courier services. We're doing record business. We're on track to do probably at least 10 more variance cases this year than we did in any year in previous history. In addition, we've had a lot of administrative appeals. We've had a lot of special exception modifications, and we're doing our best to keep pace, and I think doing that quite well.
Well, it's good to know that we offered chairs and laptops, and you put them to good use. So we appreciate that.
This is a maintenance level budget. The drop that you see is due to the fact that we don't have to buy laptops this year, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Appreciate that. Mr. Chair, any comments?
I have to express my complete support of Ms. Jay. Due to her hard work, we've been able to get our opinions out in less than 30 days. I think we're providing tremendous service to the county residents that need the Board of Appeals to support them or to defend them, as the case may be. So with the comfort of the new chairs, we're able to be even more effective.
There you go. Well, we appreciate your service, Mr. Pentecost, and appreciate the work, and it's very important. And I just think the revenue issues, I think there's probably some time before the lack of new special exceptions, catch up to the filings, but it is something that we're going to have to monitor. So I appreciate noting that, and I think it's just something that we're going to have to determine how to offset that revenue for moving forward. But fortunately, it doesn't seem that that is trending too quickly here, and so we'll just keep an eye on it as we move forward and work through it. Unless any comments from colleagues, without objection, we will. And with appreciation, we will accept this council staff recommendation and appreciate your service.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember Juwan.
This once I'm going to come try out one of those chairs, so just I'll visit you. But thank you for your work. Okay, sounds good.
There you go. With that, appreciate it. We are going to move on to our next item. Our third item is the Kid Museum NDA. This NDA had historically been handled in the Recreation Department, is now its own standalone NDA. There was a shift of funding from grants as part of the grants program. We had a robust discussion about that in the Government Operations Fiscal Policy Committee that will continue on Friday. This is an example of one of the base budget shifts that created an NDA, and with that, I will turn it over to council staff, Ms. Michelson, who's stepping in here on this NDA.
Yes, and this is my my last committee budget work session for this week, and what a lovely way to end talking about the Kid Museum. So I think you've already hit on some of the highlights. The increase that's proposed for this year, which is 16.6%, is so significant in large part because of a shift of funding that was already going to the Kid Museum in FY23, just from a different source, from community grants. So it's now moved into this space of this NDA. I'm going to highlight just a couple of other things, and then perhaps you might want to give an opportunity for the executive director just to give you a very quick update on some things that are happening. One of the things I've noted on page 3 of the memo is their projections for FY24 show increases, significant increases in corporate contributions and foundations, exactly what we like to see in an organization like this, to continue to bring in contributed income, as well as growth in the earned income as well, and modest growth in the operating expenses too. And the council does not approve a line item budget for the Kid Museum. It's just a transfer. But the county funding is only a small percentage of the total revenues they get, about 20% or so. And in the summary of the budget requests that they submitted, they indicated that they are going to focus on 3 key areas: organizational development and growth, expanded access to new programmatic initiatives, and deepened community outreach and engagement. As you know, the executive or the Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice did not do an analysis of NDAs, so they don't have a formal report on this, except there's so much in what Kid Museum has submitted to you to emphasize their very strong focus on racial equity and social justice. And over 60% of their program participants identify as Black or Latino, and 50% are from under-resourced communities. And the only issue before the committee is that there is an inflationary increase proposed of approximately $48,000, which needs to be taken as a reduction and put on the reconciliation list. Since I believe that other similar inflationary adjustments have been designated as high priority, I've suggested high priority for this inflationary increase as well.
Appreciate it. This is the process, as you know, that the council president has set forth for us, that any new expenditures in this budget be put on the reconciliation list, whether they be from the council or from the county executive. I think it is consistent as high priority. I would support that. We have done that in this committee before. Before I turn to colleagues and make a few comments myself, turn to you, Ms. Lesser, if you want to share any comments, and Vice Chair Brewer.
Yes.
So I see you are capable of stepping aside from a chairmanship to a vice chair at times. So that's always good to see, but we appreciate your involvement in the organization as well. Ms. Lesser?
Thank you. Thank you for having us here today, and I want to acknowledge my colleague Liza Manfred, who's been with the organization for 7 years, helping to build Kid Museum brick by brick with us, and our esteemed board member who you already mentioned, Robbie Brewer, who likewise has been involved for many years in creating Kid with this council, and we are very thankful for your support, the county's support in bringing Kid Museum to life. As you know, Kid Museum is a unique community asset that's built on public-private partnership. We're an equity-focused educational makerspace for youth ages 4 to 18. And more than a typical museum, we serve as an innovation partner to Montgomery County Public Schools, offering deep dive multi-session programs that build creative problem solving and STEM skills that grow kids' confidence as learners and future innovators. Our mantra is every kid a maker. And as you heard, we are on a mission to ensure that all kids in our community have access to these transformative learning experiences. You heard some of the statistics just now, so I won't repeat those, but we are deeply committed to equity and inclusion in our work. And by prioritizing populations traditionally underrepresented in STEM fields, We know that our work plays an important role contributing to the development of a diverse and skilled workforce and a more equitable and inclusive economy that we know is consistent with this council's work. Montgomery County has been with us every step of the way to make this vision come to life, from starting as a pop-up festival and the first Maker Fair in the DC region, right at Silver Spring Civic Building, to opening a proof of concept at Davis Library, and now just 1 year ago opening our new flagship facility above Bethesda Metro. This new space has allowed us to dramatically expand our impact, both at that location as well as in the community. And we've now established Kid Museum as the leading center for maker learning nationally, right here in our community. But here in our community is the focus of our work, and there's never been greater urgency. As you all know, kids are still reeling from the impact of COVID learning loss, and the opportunity gap for Black and Latino youth in particular has widened. So we really desperately need to make investments in helping our kids make up for lost time and re-engage in learning. Kids programs support STEM and social emotional learning, reaching kids both in school and in out of school time settings. We've ramped up considerably on both of those fronts this year. We're now serving 1,100 to 1,200 visitors a week in a 6-day-a-week operation across multiple sites. So this year we will have reached more than 26,000 visitors, and next year we are on track to bring that to 40,000 people. For this year, that includes more than 5,000 MCPS students from some of our highest need schools. So both the in-school and out-of-school time really has ramped up with the support of this council. Again, we've expanded our kid after-school program. We're now in 11 high-need schools in a twice-a-week program for kindergarten through third graders, bringing them maker learning as a way that is helping to align with COVID recovery and really directly aligned with those learning goals. At the other end of the spectrum, we've grown our high school program. We have more than 300 students having work-based learning experiences as part of Kid Museum's work. So we have grown on multiple fronts. I won't take you through all of it. We would love for you all to visit and see the work in action on the weekends, during the week. As we look ahead for next year, we really want to build on our proven success and impact. 3 out of every 4 middle schoolers we're serving are interested in pursuing a STEM job in the future. At the elementary level, 93% of the students we're serving say they experience joy in learning STEM. These are the kinds of outcomes that we need to keep investing in our community, and we know that we can't start too early, and we have to sustain that learning over time. So we are deeply thankful for the support of this council. There is no way we would have started, gotten to the middle, or gotten to the point where we are today without you. And we look forward to continuing this work together.
Well, we appreciate all the work. Thanks for walking us through that. I will say, I think I was at the first Maker Fair, and I was at the groundbreaking. I think I missed the opening at Davis Library, but visited several times, including at least, I think, 2 visits with Councilmember Jawando, one of which was with his whole family, or at least a large contingent of the family. I think you had the whole family, but like my family growing up, his family rolls pretty deep, more than a car full, so to speak. But and I was just there at Community Day the other day and saw the new space be as alive as I have seen it. I've got to imagine hundreds of young people there, and you could just see the creative juices flowing in their minds, and it was really inspiring for me to see them be inspired and interested. So really great to see the growth and the expansion, the hub and spoke model that you shared with us previously of what this shared investment and this public-private partnership could look like. And I personally am just really appreciative of all of the work that you are doing and all the commitment that you have brought in from board members and volunteers and staff who have bought into this model and this idea. So really appreciate that. The chair of the Education Committee and also a member of this committee, Councilmember Druano.
Thank you, Chair Friedson. Good to see you. This is a good way to. We're not done yet, but we still got some. I'm glad you get to end on this item. We have some other things, but yeah, just such a big fan. You're doing great work, and every time we hear from the community, we attend an event, everyone's enjoying themselves. I'm really happy to hear and would love to at some point follow up on how you're assessing those or getting those results that you talk about. The survey. We don't have to do it today, but I'd be curious to see how we're because I think there's some. One of the things we're trying to do in all of our funding of our out of school time and school programs is get better at assessing the outcomes, whether it's the tutoring, I'd be curious if there could be some shared learning on that with the school system. But yeah, the qualitative data is undeniable. So just really, really appreciate it. I'm glad you've got your own space and you've grown, and so we'll continue to support it. It's a great partnership with the school system. And just how many kids served last year? Yeah, I know you said it.
It's been 26,000 this school year, basically.
26,000, and we're not even done.
We're not even done.
We're not even done. So,
and to your question about impact, we actually have invested this year in a chief impact officer who is helping to lead our research and evaluation efforts, and we've strengthened our partnership with universities at Shady Grove, really working together on that sort of longitudinal research of how we help kids from pre-K through higher ed to pursue STEM fields. So we are right in there along the lines of what you're saying. That is very much where we are focused and making those investments.
That's awesome. And I remember I think the last event I attended was when we had the, at the University of Shady Grove, when we had the science.
Exactly.
I forget the name of the event, but where kids did their projects from different middle schools.
Yep, Invent the Future.
Invent the Future, there you go. And just, it's such an amazing set of young people, and you can just see their eyes just light up. So thank you, and well worth the investment, and appreciate all the work you're doing.
Inventing the future, indeed, what the Kid Museum is doing every day. I now have the pleasure of introducing the Economic Development Chair. I'd like to say this is the most powerful committee. We have three very important chairs who all get to sit here side by side, but I really do think appropriate the Education Chair and the Economic Development Chair when we think about this organization and we think about STEM and STEAM learning. It really is about connecting education to economic development and jobs and providing for careers and also for entrepreneurs, because I think many of the people who you are touching are going to come up with a new idea that no one's ever thought of, and if you can't find a job that makes sense for you, create one. And I think many of the 40,000 people you will reach next year will be part of inventing their own. So with that.
Very quickly, big fan, to the point that you're going to see two people. You're going to see me during pickup and drop off during the summer. That's all I'm going to say, with my two little ones, my two little monsters, I call them. And so I say that. And the other thing, I would love at some point in the future, you need to have a second office. And that second office has to be in Wheaton. So at some point, we need to strategize and see how we can make that happen, because the need is huge. And as a parent, I can tell you, we struggle looking for places for after-school programs and summer programs. And I'm paying full price, and I'm telling you, it's hard. I also use the Parks and Rec summer camps, and they're already filled. The wait list is huge.
Yep.
So, and as Chair Friedson was saying, this is also part of the economic development umbrella. So I mean it. We need to talk and see how we can make that happen, that expansion.
I'd love to talk more about
and
that.
Great work. So.
Thank you.
Well, appreciate it. Ms. Lesser, Ms. Manfred, Mr. Brewer, thank you. With that, we have a council staff recommendation for approving the $216,000 shift from grants to the Kid Museum NDA, which is level of effort from last year, and then the $47,880 inflationary increases, which would go on the rec list as a high priority. And we, without objection, will accept that committee and council staff recommendation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good work.
Thank you. See you all soon.
See you soon. All right, we're going to move on to our final item for this afternoon's conversation, the Office of the People's Council. And we have Ms. Nadeau, council staff, who is here. And I believe we also have Ms. Wellington from the executive branch who's here and can answer any questions as well. So I will turn it over to Ms. Nadeau.
Good afternoon, committee. So the Office of the People's Council, the CE's recommended budget is $246,375. $213,000 of that is for personnel, and the remainder is operating costs. There was a public hearing on this item, and we've also received a lot of correspondence, the majority in support of funding the office. Given the nature of this budget item, I'm going to do a little bit of history and background of the office. So this office was last funded in fiscal year 2010 at $250,000. And at that time, the county was facing a serious fiscal situation. And on top of that, there was an OLO report that had looked at the office and addressed some issues. And the council agreed with the Fed committee at the time to not appropriate funds, and it has not been funded since. So last year, the county executive had included this in the recommended budget, and the committee had noted that none of the issues in the OLO report had not yet been addressed, and there hadn't been meetings with the county executive yet to sort of discuss what this office should look like. And so the committee recommended not appropriating funds, and the council agreed. So since I referenced it, I'm not going to do an in-depth discussion of the June 2008 OLO report, but I wanted to discuss some of the high-level things that it mentioned to help you make this decision. So first, they made two recommendations. I'll do those up top. So the first recommendation was that the council needs to revisit the purpose, the duties, and the structure of the office as it is outlined in county law. And second, at that time in 2008, they'd recommended postponing personnel decisions until the council has completed that review. So the way that the Office of the People's Council works in the code, I'm on page 3 here, sorry, I know I'm moving very quickly. But the way the office works in the code is it's a position that's appointed by the county council, either as a merit or contract employee. And the People's Council can participate as a party in proceedings because in the law it is an attorney. And the People's Council may also provide technical assistance. And so when the office was created, there were a lot of discussions among the council. I think it took 3 or 4 bills to work out some of the details, and there were sort of 5 big categories of decisions. So one is, what's the statutory purpose of the office, meaning is it advocacy, is it information, is it technical assistance? Second is, who does the People's Council represent? So is it, who's the client? Should it be homeowner associations? Should it not include developers? Can it include anybody? Should it represent the public interest? And then another big question is, how do we decide what the public interest is? There were questions about staffing structure, and then also whether it should be a set term, and then again, how exactly the People's Council should participate. So the OLO report surveyed a lot of people. It's a very long report. It is attached to your packet. And, you know, a lot of the questions were asking for some clarification. There were pros, there were cons. Basically, for everything in there, there was somebody for or against. I did include at page 5 a comparison with other jurisdictions, because this was raised a lot during the public hearings, is that other jurisdictions do have this office. So the 4 in here are our neighboring counties, so Baltimore County, Harford, Howard, and Prince George's County. I will note, I sort of dug into each of their charters, and they're all structured very differently, and the participation really varies. So that's something else that the council could look at. So Next up, there was Bill 1823, which Chair Friedson had introduced to address some of the issues that were raised in the OLO report. There was a public hearing on that bill as well. Most of the public hearing asked to fund the office as originally intended because that issue of whether this person should be an advocate. So I just want to mention that up front. And then lastly, racial equity and social justice. As you've heard, since you're far into budget now, the Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice had all the departments and agencies do a self-evaluation and then gave them a rating. Because there's no one in this office currently, there was no data provided for the racial equity and social justice piece. There was an impact statement for the bill that noted that the advocacy piece could be helpful, but something that council staff wants to note is at the time that the office existed, we hadn't even passed the Racial Equity and Social Justice Act yet, and the OLO report doesn't include any demographic data of which communities were helped and what the actual impact was in terms of equity, which is another issue that would need to be discussed in terms of amending the provisions for the People's Council, is how we make sure racial equity is still included. So, given all of that, as you know, Council President Glass's request for the budget this year is that all additions above fiscal year 23 are on the reconciliation list. So this entire office, if funded, would be on that list. So the council staff provides two options. My recommendation is not appropriating funds at this time because, as that OLO report had noted and recommended, the council has not yet sat down and revisited the details of this office and watched in the legislation. And so, especially given it being a tough fiscal year, council staff's recommendation is the committee or the council have those discussions before appropriating those funds. And then, of course, because I always like to give you guys an alternative, if you wanted, you could fully fund the office and place it on the reconciliation list as a priority.
Thank you. Let me turn to colleagues. Councilmember Jwanda.
Right. They let me speak when it's the controversial stuff, you know. So the frustration I have, and I'm going to ask you to answer, Ms. Wellington, is that I'm having deja vu. This is the exact conversation we had last year at the Fed Committee. And I'll say what I said then, that in theory, I think the Office of the People's Council, like the counties that have similar functions, is a good thing to help people figure out how to navigate complex land use where they're at a disadvantage. But we did talk about the OLO report, the 2008 report, and I said at that time to you.
Oh, I remember.
We were upstairs. I don't think we were here. I think we were upstairs on the 7th floor, and that I need you to work over the next year to get us these changes and updates to the office so that we could consider it, and the restructuring of it before we fund it. To my knowledge, unless you have something to share today, that has not happened. And I'm sure council staff, I don't even know if you were working here at the time. Maybe, were you here yet, Ms. Nadeau? Yeah, you were here.
Last year,
you
yes.
didn't work on, I don't know if you did this issue though, but anyway.
Yeah, it was me.
Okay, it was you. So
Thanks
you were
a lot.
there too. So it was literally deja vu. You said the same thing. And so if you could just talk to me about that. And I say that in the context of, like, I get the public wanting to have this, and the people who we've heard from, which have who would like to have something like this. And I know the chair has made efforts to try to address the concern in the community with his legislation. But so talk to me about what you've done since this year last time.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I'm Meredith Wellington for the county executive. Well, it's an awkward question, isn't it? Because this position is a legislative branch position, and it's not a county executive position. If it had been, believe me, I would have had all the changes that I could possibly consider that would make this job work.
But hold on, I'm going to stop you there, because yes, that technically correct. The conversation we had, and we could pull the video, was like, hey, well, let's send us what you think it should do. What in response to the OLO report, what should be the changes? How do we account for those issues? And you said absolutely, something to that effect. So I know it is our in the legislative branch, but you all have a lot more capacity, and this is a priority for the county executive, right? You're here today in part to advocate for this, right?
Well, you all have taken action because you have a bill to abolish this position. It's not before us today. So I'm certainly, we would work with you, glad to work with you and sit down tomorrow to work out any details. It actually isn't that complicated to find a path to a proper Office of the People's Council. You know, the road to racial equity and social justice is complicated, but you can get there. And I think, you know, we didn't have the analysis of that organization last year, but now they're actually recommending that you all fund this position, because even the original concept, although it didn't have the depth of a true racial equity and social justice analysis, but even originally, the idea of it was to level the playing field so that somebody would have, you have a person you can just go to and you don't even know what your issue means. You know, I'm having problems with flooding in my house, or I don't know who to call, or I'm having an issue with next door neighbors in terms of they're wanting to build a 5-story addition. So it is something that's, you know, easy, not easy, but can easily worked out. Let's put it that way, because unfortunately I was around when we actually had the People's Council. Mm-hmm. So I had, you know, hands-on experience with it. And it worked a lot more easily than it sounds. I mean, the man had common sense. He didn't bring lawsuits against everybody. And in representing the public interest, well, what did that mean? It meant a complete record, a fair and complete record, because folks have trouble breaking out the facts. They do, because they don't know which facts are relevant. I mean, we don't always know. So he did that, and he didn't always take the resident's position. Sometimes he took the county's position. But yes, the county executive is funding it. I certainly apologize for any misunderstanding, but the point we're at right now is not that we don't know what to do with it, but that you have another bill pending to abolish it. So,
well, yeah, again, as you mentioned correctly, that's not what we're taking up today, and you know that bill will have its consideration before this committee, I would think, sometime soon after the budget. So, all that being said, you know, I do believe there is a role for this office in the county. It has to be the right role. It has to have the, you know, since this stopped in 2008, for example, our English as a second language population has exploded in that time. I want to make sure it's serving everybody, though, not just a small group of people.
Right,
and
of course.
So that may want to get in the way of certain things and understand how to navigate and avail themselves of county services, which is always the problem we have, right? Like, you know, how do you make sure all the great stuff we have, whether it's our, you know, libraries or our recreation department, our parks, get used by everybody? That is the challenge, one of the main challenges we face. This is, I think it's even more of an issue here because this is an overly technical set of, you know, you have to understand you have a right to access these services. You have to know what you're accessing, how to engage with them. But that being said, I think there could be utility for it. I take council staff's point that the budget's tough this year. So, you know, I want to hear what my colleagues think, but, you know, I think at a minimum, at a maximum, it would be a priority on the list, and we'll see what happens in reconciliation. But either way, whatever happens, I want a double commitment. You know, let's work together, because the public does want this to exist in some form or fashion. Our neighboring jurisdictions have this in some form or fashion. Let's figure it out in the right way. When I say let's, the legislative executive branch, and work together and obviously it's our position, we'll decide ultimately, but you know, I commit to working on that. That being said, I also would be okay adding it to the list as a priority, but realizing that probably means it's not going to get funded this year. But in light that we have so much on the high priority list, But I do think it's important to send the message that this is something we need to, this function is something we need. And I'm willing to work with my colleagues and with you all to figure out what that exactly looks like.
Thank you for that background, Councilmember Jawanda. I had no idea that this was discussed and the commitments that were made and that were not followed. The county executive does send recommendation on legislation all the time. So there's no excuse. I had to say that to you. Absolutely zero excuse. And you know me, I'm straight shooter, and it's just not, I can just be quiet in hearing that. That's one thing. The second thing, you mentioned if people have issues with flooding or like different things happening in their neighborhood or their home. I was selected to this position. I was sworn in December. Since December to this day, if you check my email and phone messages, call and email after email from people asking for help so I can assist them in different things, dealing with DPS, dealing with the libraries, dealing with MCPS, with everything. So this idea that there's no one helping people, it's so wrong and it's so false. I mean, I can show you emails. Our jobs is to help people. We have 11 council members this time whose job is to protect communities no matter their background. So for me, it's really hard to digest having the need of this when we have 11 people who are getting paid with staff people whose job is to help people navigate the council, council government and council and government services. I was also on the planning board like you were. You were there, I don't know, 30 years ago, like a long time ago. I was there until
2008.
Oh, there you go. It feels like ages ago. I feel like I was
you
there
were
like
in high
ages.
school.
Ages, probably, yeah. Ages ago. And it is, as you know, dealing with planning board applications you can find neighbors fighting neighbors based on one site plan. It's so you're adding one more thing here. And I have an issue with that. You're putting more red tape. You're adding more red tape. You're not helping. You're adding more red tape. This is why I didn't want to speak. So anyway, I appreciate the staff recommendation, and I hear Councilmember Uyawanda who's saying that the maximum he could do will be priority, right? Understanding that will not be funded because we have a extremely difficult budget. Look at the proposal that the county, your boss, sent to us.
Yes, I'm aware of that.
This is not a back and forth.
These are difficult
hold
decisions.
on a second. This is not a back and forth right now. I have the floor. It's adding one more thing, and it's irresponsible. So I will say we should not put this on the reconciliation bill list at all. So we do need a conversation on the use of this, but now you know how I'm feeling, because we have 11 council members whose job is to protect everybody. That's it.
Well, thank you for that. I just want to address a couple of things. I really appreciate the comments of colleagues, and I too am experiencing deja vu. I don't think it is a fair description to say that the county executive did not provide a path forward on how this will address the concerns that have been raised, because it's a legislative issue. Because the county executive, probably more than any prior county executive in the history of the county, weighs in on legislative matters, on land use matters that are beyond the scope of the executive branch. It is his prerogative. I respect his right to do that. He has an important perspective, and he is not shy about sharing it, sometimes in a timely way and sometimes at the absolute last possible minute. And so I just don't think that that is a reasonable dynamic. There is a bill before us. We're not discussing it today. I put forward that bill. I have said before, I'll say again here, I put that forward to try to avoid the very conversation we're having right now, where each and every year we were going to get into a dynamic where the county executive doesn't put forward a plan to address any of the issues that have been raised, tries to fund this. There's a lot of advocacy around it, and it's a battle royale between the county executive and the county council, which I think we need less of, particularly around these types of matters. So I put forward this bill as an alternative option for consideration if council members were uncomfortable moving forward with this office, as the council had been previously, but would like to address the issues in some way. And I understand if that compromise is not enough for many people and doesn't address some of the concerns that folks have raised, but that was the intention and continues to be the intention of that thought. The racial equity and social justice statement raised a number of important points, but it did not talk about what the Office of the People's Counsel has ever been. It does not talk about what is recommended in this budget. It talks about the idea of what something like the Office of the People's Counsel could potentially be at some later date, with a lot of thought and an overwhelmingly larger amount of funding to be able to do the type of outreach work and the type of community-based work that was discussed there. It is not possible with one attorney, as is being proposed and has been historically the case, to do what the racial equity and social justice statement suggested. I also see what was being proposed, and I also appreciate the need, but there are real concerns about who determines the public interest, who is benefiting, who is accessing these. And it's the exact same conversation we had last year. And when our office reached out to the executive branch to ask what, if any, plan there was to address the concerns that had been raised, we received the language for the Office of the People's Counsel copied verbatim from the code in the charter. That's it.
Was it a memo?
That's
I
it.
have no knowledge of that.
It was an email.
Oh, I have not seen that.
Your colleagues on behalf of you and your boss. That's all we had received. And so, you know, I think it is a challenging environment that we are in, that it doesn't feel like a serious effort has been made to actually move this forward and to actually have thoughts on how to address these issues. And I also understand why there is such interest in this, particularly from constituents who I represent, who I hear from all the time.
Well, then we should do something about it. I mean, why can't we work on it then?
Okay, this is not a back and forth, but I appreciate it. This proposal that is before us will not accomplish what was suggested by the Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice statement. There's just, it will not do that. It cannot do that because what is suggested cannot be handled by one person. And there are significantly different views of what this office is intended to do, even in what you discussed today, flooding in your house or an issue with a next door neighbor. That is not what has traditionally been the function of the Office of the People's Counsel. So I appreciate the point Councilmember Joando is making about putting it on the reconciliation list as a priority, but I'm personally not comfortable with the idea of signaling that we're going to put it on the reconciliation list, knowing from my perspective that it's not going to be funded. And I appreciate that, and I think you were very upfront about saying that, and I acknowledge that. There's almost $70 million in just high priority items on the reconciliation list. If this gets put on as a priority, it'd be a way for us to show that we are not rejecting it, but ultimately would not be funding it. I understand people are not going to be happy with the decision, but I'd rather be upfront about it personally and just acknowledge that if we are going to move forward with this office, we need to really think through what the office does and who it serves and determine what and how the public interest is determined. And I don't think those questions have been answered. And I don't think there has been a good faith effort from the executive branch, with all due respect from you, Ms. Wellington, or from the county executive or anybody else in the executive branch, to put forward a realistic plan that would address these issues and reflect the changes that have been suggested. And I think it's easy to talk about what could be and what might be, but we don't have a realistic path forward for what actually would be and how it would serve the interests that have been suggested. So I will agree with you, Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez. I don't think we should add it, and I am still open to funding an Office of People's Counsel. I'm still open to, if it is not the will of the body, to move forward with a different approach to the office, to have it focus on the exact type of work that you suggested earlier, Ms. Wellington, in the conversation, to help provide resources and provide technical assistance and help to untangle the Byzantine dynamics that the zoning code can be, and that the process of land use in this county and in most places can present to residents. But I don't think we're at that point here. So,
may I respond?
Very briefly.
I really, of course, appreciate your comments, but it seems like it's unnecessary to turn this into such a vitriolic discussion. I mean, if we share the goal of defining a people's council, and with all, can we let bygones be bygones and move forward with that? Because that's the most important thing. I think that the Racial Equity and Social Justice Report was actually quite eloquent. And yes, it's hard to start with one person, but one person is a beginning. So I would just ask us, I understand the budget. The budget is a very, very difficult situation, but that we use this meeting as an opportunity to meet further on how we could define a Office of the People's Council that would be acceptable.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm going to turn it over to Councilman Joanna, but I think the key point here is that realistically, this is not the way that government works. We do not wait to have a budget discussion and a hearing and flesh out how an office is going to function that has not been funded for 13 years. What was requested a year ago was that the executive branch put forward a practical way to address the issues and come back in this budget 1 year later with a plan that the council would be comfortable with. There is no plan. There has been no change. The exact same thing that was presented to us last year has been presented to us again this year. That's the frustration that you heard from Councilmember Jawando. It's a frustration you hear from me. And I will say, I didn't hear universal views on this dais that there is a belief of this position being able to serve the purpose as has been suggested, which was one of the concerns that I had. And so I attempted to put forward a compromise to say, hey, there are shared interests here and shared goals, and it was responded to in a way that was viewed very negatively. And my concern then, last year, my concern today remains that we're going to end up in the same place where the executive refuses to put forward a plan and a path to address the issues, that there are concerns on the council that you've heard some of which today and some of which you will probably hear subsequently, and that we're going to end up in this repeated battle year in and year out. That's why I put forward another option. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem like there is an interest, and certainly hasn't been over the last calendar year, to try to address the issue. But with
I'm sorry, but what is the other option?
The bill that you
put forward.
The other option is to create an office that deals with the exact type of technical assistance and support to residents that you earlier today described in the type of work that an Office of People's Counsel could do. But again, we're not here. This is not a debate.
No,
this is a budget hearing.
I'm just asking.
This is a budget hearing, and you asked to respond. We've given you, I think, ample opportunity to state your case, and you've stated it. We appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Let me turn it over to Councilmember Joanna.
Did you have something to say? And Go ahead. Just introduce yourself. Are you
My name
OMB?
is Grace Pedersen. I'm from the OMB. And just one thing I wanted to say, recognizing the mutual interest in having this function in fiscal 24, to have some commitment of resources in fiscal 24 would be helpful to stand it up and further those conversations about how it could be implemented. So from OMB's perspective, I wanted to share that.
So you're saying, just to repeat what I think I heard you say, you're saying having some level of funding, if there's a shared commitment to have the office, would be helpful. Is that what you said,
Right.
basically? Okay.
Right.
But what would the fund, yeah, the question is, what would the funding do if we're not 100% sure about it?
Do
Yeah,
you
go
want me to
ahead.
respond? So right now it's funded as if we're going to just implement what statute currently provides. But if this is an ongoing conversation, it'll be a lot easier to implement that in fiscal 24. If we already allocate the resources,
Yeah.
then kind of like moving this along and having this
And
informal.
are you new?
I am.
Yeah, and that's okay. I appreciate that, but that's what we said last year. And my problem is, and what really has irked me, is this using the cloak of the racial equity statement, because it has to be a cloak, because you did nothing from last year, and I'm not asking for a response yet. I will let you say something.
Okay, thank you.
But you've done
Because
nothing.
you're attacking me, so.
No, I'm attacking the process that you said from your mouth last year upstairs to me that you were going to work on this and come back with something, and you didn't. And I can show you the tape. You did nothing. Didn't communicate with my office. Nothing. Hold on. I'm going to let you respond. And then you say, "Oh, there's this racial equity thing, and so let's fund it and we'll figure it out." If you wanted to figure it out, the time to figure it out was over the last year. And it could have a function, but if it doesn't, it's really important. It'll be the squeaky wheels who want to stop development who will use it. That's and we have to, and I don't want it to do that. It could have an appropriate function, but you all have signaled to me in the county executive that you're not serious about it doing any other function that might be more inclusive, because you came up with nothing in the last year. So I've actually changed my position entirely, and we won't put it on the list. And I'll work with community members. I do want to speak to the community members who have reached out. If you want to work with us, urge the county executive to actually put something in place and say something that means something. I get tired of this, like, oh, it's the racial equity. But no, you didn't come with a plan that talked about racial equity at all.
Well, wait a minute.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't feel like it's helpful if we're just going to, everybody get angry. If you're angry, and I accept that. I did say I would do something. I didn't say I would rewrite the whole bill for you, nor did I understand completely that it was the council's position. And you've had the position. I mean, this is becoming a silly argument. Of course you guys could have initiated it. And you could have just sent me an email and said, Meredith, what are your thoughts? Or we'll work with you, or I'm going to ask Levu to work on it. And that didn't happen. But I'm not, getting mad at you all.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that, but the county executive funded this 2 years in a row and said nothing more than the charter language. And then when we had a direct conversation, you and I, about let's work with this, you came here again and said the same thing again. But this time you've added on, but the racial equity statement says it could be used positively, but we don't know exactly how it could be used because we didn't do anything.
But that's a report that
didn't
you
email me.
asked for. That the racial equity and social justice is the report that you're supposed to evaluate.
No, what I'm saying is that
Not-
we can evaluate it because you did no work about the functioning of the office. So anyway, we're going in a round robin now, but
Yeah.
I'm
I mean,
still
it's
happy
all
to
in the
work on
OLO
it. We'll try it
report
again.
from 2008. So
Let me be very clear.
It's
If
not
you
that
want, if the county
difficult.
executive wants to fund this position next year or at any point, we expect recommendations about how to address the OLO report and how this will be an office that equitably works with everyone in our community. And if you don't produce that, we will not fund it. Happy to partner with you on that, but it's on you in the county executive's budget who proposed to fund this to work on that, from my perspective. Back to you.
Well, I don't think I could say it any better than Councilmember Joando just said it. It sounds like there's a 3-0 recommendation at this point. There is an interest, at least in 2 members of the committee. If there is something serious, we will be happy to work with you, but it's going to take a lot of work over the next year in order to do that. In the meantime, we're not going to recommend adding the funding for this position to
Well, it's useful that you'll
reconciliation list.
welcome something from the county executive.
We're not yielding to you. This is not your meeting. You've gotten more time than just about any guest, which is what you are at this meeting, that we've welcomed you to the dais to provide your perspective, and the time to do that has finished. We appreciate you joining us. We appreciate the conversation. We would hope that if you are truly and in fact interested in moving this forward, that some work happens between this budget cycle and next budget cycle to actually move us in a direction that helps us get there. With that, we have a committee recommendation to go with the staff recommendation. Thank you for your work. Thank you to OMB for joining us and for sharing your thoughts. And with that, we are adjourned.